Well, you got big time, prime time conflict on the presidential side, and you've got the 610 connector just kind of getting weird.
The Dan York State of Mind program is brought to you in part by Lookout Rhode Island and Takeo Comfort Solutions.
And I'll explain the weird part when it comes to the 610 connector momentarily. Mike Collins is here today. He's a guy who has kind of risen to public domain based on his good citizenship, showing up at public hearings and voicing his opinion about the truck toll, which of course you associate with road works. Unfortunately, the governor and the DOT director yesterday held a major press conference about the 610 connector and road works and never talked about the truck toll. But I can bring Mike in as a loyal opposition to the concept, but also as kind of a reference because he's one of the most researched guys on the 610 connector, and I think that's an important thing to keep in the conversation. So Mike is my guest tonight, and you'll meet him coming up momentarily. How's everybody on this Thursday evening? Pleasure to have you aboard. Thanks for tuning in to my State of Mind. Let's go to the rundown, just kind of take a look at what's going on. Well, there's not a long rundown because there's just, well, last night kind of dominated everything, didn't it? Headlines, New York Times suggest that it was the preview of a presidential debate, the first one, of course, on the 26th of September, and I agree. I really do agree. Let's do a little bit of a summary here, then we'll check some of the coverage.
Hillary Clinton came out swinging at Donald Trump the morning after the two presidential candidates attended a televised commander-in-chief forum in New York.
How totally unqualified he is to be president.
At the forum, she admitted it was a mistake to have a personal email account as Secretary of State, but she defended her handling of top-secret information.
I communicated about classified material on a wholly separate system.
Her comments came the same day House Democrats released a 2009 email exchange between Clinton and former Secretary of State Colin Powell. In it, Powell described how he had a personal computer hooked up to a private phone line to avoid going through State Department servers. Donald Trump appeared separately at the forum, where he said the U.S. military needs new leadership.
The generals have been reduced to rubble.
He went on to praise Russian President Vladimir Putin.
In that system, he's been a leader far more than our president has been a leader.
President Obama hit back during a press conference in Laos.
Just listen to what he says and follow up and ask questions about what appear to be either contradictory or uninformed or outright wacky ideas.
Libertarian presidential candidate Gary Johnson released a statement saying he does understand the conflict in Syria after this appearance on MSNBC's Morning Joe.
What would you do if you were elected about Aleppo?
About
Aleppo.
And what is Aleppo?
You're kidding.
No.
Johnson said he thought it was an acronym and blanked.
All right, let's take a look at a couple Washington Post headlines here first, if we can. It's not clear that Trump understands the relationship between the president and the military. He praises Putin at the National Security Forum, and fact-checking is a mess. If you watched that thing on NBC last night, and I did, a couple of thoughts. First of all, Hillary Clinton on the emails, she just doesn't understand that she should stop prosecuting the case on the emails. Stop arguing what was classified, what was not. Just say, you know, like there's an old phrase in Jersey that I can't use tonight because it's an FCC violation. But it's kind of like, you trusted me. You messed up. At some point, she's just going to say, just hang me. What else do you want from me? Because if she keeps arguing that it was okay in certain circumstances, it just doesn't sell. She just doesn't get it. And I don't know why she's not getting some advice that way. In the meantime, Mitt Romney wants to see Gary Johnson in the debates, and up until this morning, so did I. This guy cannot be in the debates any longer. If you don't know what Aleppo is and you're running for the presidency of the United States, you know, what dawns on me is that he didn't, you know, there's a way to buy time and say, yeah, Aleppo, talk to me about your question. What do you mean? And then the question would fill in. Instead, he just went, what is it? I think that might be some of the marijuana, you know, because he smokes a lot of dope. And, you know, I begrudgingly said, well, that's where my vote's going to go. Now, I got nowhere to go. I don't know where you're going to go, but I got nowhere to go. And It's just a mess. You know, Matt Lauer is getting a lot of heat for the way he moderated that thing last night. It's an almost impossible task, by the way. You try to wedge, you know, all of this into an hour, bring veterans in with questions and answers. It's kind of a show as opposed to a real serious conversation. He didn't go too long on the emails of Hillary Clinton. He just didn't go too long enough, you know, pressing Trump on Putin and this. I thought the most egregious thing last night was Trump's suggestion that you know, in his briefings, his security briefings, that there was some kind of, you know, clear difference between the briefers and the president. That was so distasteful and just absolutely so dangerous. So it's a whole big mess. You know who else has got a mess just in reaction to the presidential race? Old Brandon Bell. Come on, Brendan, really? He's talking to Tara Granahan on the radio yesterday on WPRO and rolls off a bunch of comments on Hillary Clinton, including referring to her as subhuman. Now, this is the challenge of the flip of the television show. Now that I'm recording this in the early afternoon, 1:30 in the afternoon, and I'm on the radio from 3 to 6, you're seeing the show, but I've already done the radio show, but in terms of taping the show. But anyway, the reason I'm going over that is that Brandon Bell is scheduled today to join me at 5 o'clock, and most likely did. So you ought to go to 630wpro.com and listen to the podcast, where I believe at 5 o'clock he was going to walk that comment back. Probably a good thing to do. All righty. It's just nothing but fun when it comes to the national and local political scene, reflecting on the national. This is the story, though, that I thought grabbed a lot of attention yesterday and should. Journal front page headline. No time to wait. Yeah, all of a sudden now we're pushing the panic button on the 610 connector and specifically the Huntington Avenue Bridge. Here's Channel 12 Eyewitness News' coverage of the event.
For the next 60 days, the city of Providence has the chance to add public input on how they want the 610 connector to be rebuilt.
And if there's an opportunity to include a bike lane, I would love to do it. If there's an opportunity to have a rapid transit lane, I would love to do it.
The fast track project to fix the connector is estimated to cost $400 million.
We can invest these dollars in a way that ensures the public safety of this roadway and also enhances the livability of this entire corridor.
You can see some of the erosion from the Olneyville section side of the 610 connector. Over my shoulder, there is rebar exposed under the bridge.
It could have been a place that actually improves the environment.
Jonathan Harris is with Moving Together Providence. The group had the idea to turn the worn down corridor into a boulevard with green space, bike paths, and rapid transit. RIDOT's director Peter Alviti says that concept is now dead.
It seems like a bad deal for the future of the city and the state.
The governor never answered on whether or not she would have supported the boulevard concept, saying she would have rather liked to have seen a fuller discussion of the options.
If the public will is forceful enough and effective enough in promoting an alternative vision, then she's going to have to listen to that, even if she may prefer not to.
Temporary fixes on one of the bridges is supposed to start soon. For the other, shovels should be in the ground by next summer, with the entire project complete in 4 years.
So, lots to talk about there. Mike Collins from the Gaspee Business Network. Now, well, you guys have grown to the Cooley things there.
Yeah.
You got yours in there? Well, heck, you know, out of respect for you building an organization, I'll put my water in there.
Sure.
Welcome. Good to see you. Appreciate having you.
Yep.
The story of the 610 connector is an interesting one. The reason, it's hard, by the way, to get anybody from the state to come here and defend and or discuss the ramifications of this. The DOT director, by his nature, seems to only have a couple of friendly places that he partakes in the media, and the governor is just, the governor. I hope that she'll get in here soon. I'm working with communication staff to make that work because we got a ton of questions for her, no doubt. Mike has been protesting the truck toll aspect of this whole thing, and it's kind of like almost round peg square hole, but I trust that you've got a lot of understanding of the issue. When I say round peg square hole, nobody talked about the truck tolls yesterday.
No, they didn't. No.
So it was the whole 610, hurry up, guess what, it's worse than we think it is, we got to go and spend $400 million and go. And you know what, that whole cityscape, play volleyball on the 610 or whatever it is going to be is over. But there was never any discussion, and the press never asked about the tolls.
You know, the 610 connector has always been the crown jewel of roadworks.
Right.
As we know,
Well said.
As we know, roadworks originally started at $120 million to fix bridges, and then the 610 connector got involved in this thing to crank it up to almost $400 million. We went through the Chicken Little syndrome last year, that the sky was falling, and that every bridge was a disaster. To fortify and push roadworks through expediently. Here we are 8 or 9 months later after the passage of roadworks, and now we deem the 610 connector unsafe. Well, I'm in the trucking industry and speaking for the truck industry, and me and Chris Maxwell had this conversation.
Chris Maxwell from the Rhode Island Truckers Association.
Shut the 610 connector down. If it's that dangerous, shut it down to tractor trailers. Okay, that's a statement from us. Okay, if it's not that dangerous and this has been going on, then you will continue to keep it open. And why the expediency? What's going on here so quick? Well, we have to look back on a couple of things. I mean, no one ever begrudged that the state needed bridges and road work. But the timing and the promises of put X amount of guys to work, is the governor falling short on that? And now somebody's calling us to the plate to saying, hey, we need workers to get to work, and this is the one that puts the optimum guys to work? Who knows?
So you're tossing out innuendo that this is as much or maybe more about labor than it is about safety?
If this bridge is unsafe, with no harm or no foul to the trucking industry, shut the Route 10, 610 connected down to trucks. It's that simple.
I don't know what the end game is in that suggestion. What do you mean?
Well, the end game is if you're deeming this road that unsafe, and we've been accused, and the ultimate cause of damaging all the bridges, then obviously we're a vital or damaging source to the 610 connector, then shut it down. And then go to do your road works and shut down that viable connector. We're giving you the okay to. I mean, because you're sitting here now and telling us how dangerous this is. And we need to start immediately. So if you need to start immediately, then therefore no truck should be going across it. Do you agree or disagree?
Well, you got me stumped. I'm so stumped I need a pause and try to figure this thing out. We'll be right back. Interesting question, though, no doubt. Stay with us.
I wish we had time. I wish these bridges were in better shape and administrations before me had taken action so we weren't left where we are.
All right, so we're talking about the 610 connector. Jess, if you can pop up a map on that one, just so everybody knows what we're talking about. Most everybody watching the show knows what the 610 connector is. It's a major artery in and out of the city of Providence on the west side of the city through Olneyville, and then of course, you know, the 10 goes down through the northern sections of Cranston, and 6 goes out through Johnston and all the way out to western Rhode Island to 295. You threw me, which is good. I like to get thrown. So, are you suggesting, Mike, from your own perspective, or you've talked with Chris Maxwell from the Rhode Island Truckers Association, that you are both in the same place where you are publicly suggesting to the governor that if the Huntington Avenue Bridge is such in bad shape and now needs immediate address, shut it down to commercial truck traffic?
Absolutely.
Well, first of all, how much harm does that do to the economy and Rhode Island truckers?
Well, that shows, you know, we're resilient industry, so we can go around. We're going to go around the tolls, so we're going to go around the 610 connector.
Well, I don't know if you're going to get around the tolls, depending on how many they put up. We'll get back to that in a second.
We'll see about that.
But your motive in suggesting that, look, I understand that dangerous bridges is a complete galaxy of confusion for
Absolutely.
people. It's like, what does it mean? It's urgent. You know, the federal guy came in and said, you got to move on this right away, but it's okay, everybody, we're going to use it over the next 3 or 4 years as we fix it. But what is that the beginning and the end of your suggestion? Do you have other motive? I mean, you're suggesting that she may have motive to bring labor into play here. In other words, get the project going because we need to put jobs on the line, da-da-da-da-da. You've never argued that the 610 connector doesn't need renovation.
Oh, no question.
Okay, so I'm trying to figure out what your end game here is in making that suggestion.
Because the rapidness of coming out and saying we need to start this immediately, with not looking, now all of a sudden all the other plans are off the table, anything else, nothing else is getting vetted. We need to move, and we need to move expediently. And if you look at that, it was just the way roadworks was pushed through last year. We need, every bridge is falling down, we need to move, and we need to move expediently.
And then we heard nothing.
And then we heard nothing.
And now it's urgent.
Now it's urgent again, that's my point.
But I think the governor's presentation yesterday was that, a federal guy came in and said, let's go.
Then that's fine. And if that's the case,
shut the bridges down.
Before we have a serious accident here, then do the right thing. Do the safe thing and shut the bridge down.
Okay, interesting. What's fascinating is the people in Providence who have been trying to build a boulevard and a pretty park and maybe put the 610 underneath the grass, kind of Lincoln Tunnel-ish and all that kind of thing. And it seems for all intents and purposes they've been shut down, although Mayor Lorza stood next to the governor and said, hey, listen, we support her on the Huntington Avenue Bridge thing, but we hope to have more open public process. It doesn't seem like those people have a shot in heck of prettying up that place.
Well,
for two reasons. The federal money that was supposed to aid the 610 connector project fell through. And then on the backside, I don't know where these tolls are coming from yet.
Let me. Before we get to that, let's go one step further, Dan.
Ooh, another gem. I can feel it.
The other gem is the lawsuit in the state of New York with the ATA 3 weeks ago.
American Truckers Association.
The American Truckers Association. And the state of New York lost the lawsuit when the state of New York was misappropriating toll funds and using them for other projects other than the bridge it was deemed for. And I think Mr. Alviti now is consciously aware of that, because this morning on the Gene Valicenti show, when he was questioned about the monies and the toll gantries, he clearly stated there can only be 2 there, and that money has to stay there for those 2 bridges. So hence, over the last couple of weeks, if you've noticed, you haven't heard about the bike paths and all this other stuff after we brought attention to this lawsuit. That's a victory for us, okay? So,
meaning that toll money won't be generated for other purposes.
Other purposes, okay?
Okay, and the relevance of that point to the conversation is, I mean, I know it's all relevant, but specifically?
Hence, parkways, tunnels, bridges, all this extra money.
All the pretty stuff.
All the pretty stuff that was in part of the shell game.
All the urban development.
Isn't there anymore.
All the gross smart. You saw Scott.
There's no access to that cat.
Scott Wolf in the end of that package of the last segment saying, yeah, well, if the public sentiment is there, doesn't matter. You're saying it doesn't matter if the public sentiment is there. The courts have said can't do it.
Can't do it. You can't do it. You're going to collect 50 cents on that bridge, and that 50 cents stays earmarked for that bridge. When that bridge no longer needs maintenance, reduce the toll. That's what it comes down to. So it all comes down to 18 and 19, according to Mr. Alviti, is when they're going to collect tolls. The years 2018 and 2019. Pretty interesting concept. That's an election year. A, is the governor electable? B, is she going to be here to see it through? C, is Alviti going to be here to see it through?
You should just host your own truck toll show. You're getting really good at this. When we come back, I'll match up the timetable I learned about with the one that Michael is offering. Stay with us. All right, so my timetable from a source within the Raimondo administration tells me that the pilot programs for the tolls under the Roadworks program will be a pilot program of 2 locations by fall of 2017, meaning a year from now, and remaining tolls by the end of 2018. Interestingly, again, 610 connector presentation, almost yelling fire in a crowded theater, not quite, but
right.
Was sans toll conversation, nothing about it. So what's really going to be interesting is the ensuing couple of hundred other bridges that are, in the state of Rhode Island,
yep.
all considered to be
deficient,
functionally deficient.
Correct.
$150 million allegedly scheduled for the next fiscal year, and then another $200 some odd million the next fiscal year. All of that funding has to, if I'm calculating correctly, has to contemplate some additional cash flow from the Garvey funding
Correct.
and Jack Reed's additional federal money he was able to spot over the next 7 years.
Right.
So we are going to come to a crossroad or a cross bridge in this state sooner than later when you contemplate what happened in New York with the litigation. When you see what the pending litigation will be from the American Truckers Association and the Rhode Island Truckers Association, as soon as damage is done by trial pilot bridges, I'm sorry, tolls. And what I feel is, that eloquent scenario you painted out with who's going to be here when to fight this thing on a human level, We may not get tolls in this state. We may not get tolls in this state, I know, which will then require some fast moving in terms of being able to finance the necessary work that has to be done on the bridges.
Correct. But the funding mechanisms have always been, they're here if we need them. Roadworks is blown into a $4.6 billion project. So it's 10 times greater than really what it was originally called to be with the 610 connector. It's a 10-year program, $460 million a year. Senator Reid appropriated $1.2 billion over 5 years, which is $240 million a year.
5 years, right.
Okay? The 610 connector, for example, they're very proud to say they have the money. They do. But $300 million of Gaspee bond money, we borrowed it. Okay? We borrowed it. We're not sitting on it.
We're borrowing it. It's an anticipation note, meaning the money is borrowed ahead of anticipation of either federal or other revenues to pay it.
Absolutely. With that being said, Director Alviti makes it clear that they're reliant on the trucking industry for 10% of the annual expenditure of roadworks. Of 10% of $460 million is $46 million.
And you say the math doesn't work out.
It's still
the gross revenues versus the net expense to actually put the infrastructure up. You say doesn't make it.
It's physically
based on traffic.
Well, it's a bunch of other things, but let's. So they originally wanted 200 gantries, and the DOT, federal DOT, shut her down, and now brings it to 13 locations, 30 gantries. Now every gantry is not. Some gantries are $3, some gantries are $2. To go across the state, they're saying $20. I run my numbers to go across the state at $20. You need 9,900 tractor trailers a day. They only have 2,700. If I exasperate that number and bring it over to these little $3 tolls, you are so far in the hole. At my numbers right now, you're 36 million in the hole. At the other one, why bother? You can, and there's no gantry cost or anything in there, Dan. So moving this forward, our industry generates $7 billion in the state of Rhode Island, $2 billion in payroll. 40,000 people somewhere in the state have something to do with transportation. And number three, you're going to screw with all your supply chain. Let me explain to you the golden rule.
I got 40 seconds.
The golden rule is he who has the gold rules. They think our trucks are gold. They want our gold. We control your supply chain. We decide when you get your food, when you get your gasoline, when you get everything. We've already won. We just haven't told you that yet. With that being said, really rethink this, Rhode Island. Because now it's national. And you've got billion-dollar organizations that are going to boycott this state, and you will see the price of things fly off the wall. Massachusetts, that train station they're going to build in Pawtucket, we're going to need it. People are going to go there to go shopping.
And it's all because the truckers have been exclusively targeted
Absolutely.
for the tolls, as opposed to having to just pay tolls, which inevitably, when all the pressure mounts, the moral of the story could be new legislation that just says, your car and my car too.
Absolutely.
And so there's tonight's essay. Well done. Final word when we come back. Stay with us. You know, I've been around a little while, so have you. You know a big news story when you see it, right? Or when you hear it. And when the Truckers Association suggests that they want to call the governor's bluff and say, all right, Huntington Avenue Bridge in such bad shape that it's got to, you know, get worked on right away. We'll pull our vehicles off, or tell us that we should pull our vehicles off. That is a very, very big call to the governor. So we'll see what their response is to that, but this ought to have some repercussions into and will pass this weekend, no doubt. We'll talk more about it, of course, on the Dan York radio program, weekdays 3 to 6 on WPRO. We'll see you back here tomorrow night. Thanks for watching. Good night.